Yeah, Gurmagad Kirloch. I would like to introduce an amendment to the bill, and the amendment is to delete all words after that and substitute with the following words, which is that the bill be read a second time on the 30th of June 2023 to allow for further consideration of this bill.
Confirm, Senator, that's amendment number 1.
That is amendment number 1, yes.
Okay. Gurmagad. If you wish to continue.
Yeah, Gurmagad. Kirloch, and Minister, welcome again to the House, and I'm delighted to see you here to discuss this very important piece of legislation, and it's one that I wholly support. It goes to a subject very close to my heart, as somebody who has fought far too many elections that is good for anybody's health, and dealt with far too many posters over my lifetime. I would love to see the banning of posters. In fact, it is something I've advocated for quite a long time. And when I advocated it on Dublin City Council, I was accused of trying to push down other candidates because I was from a big party and I was a big candidate. But I understand the narrative behind that. And so in proposing the amendment, I don't do it to be obstructive or in any way prevaricate on this issue. But I do think that this issue is part of a much wider issue when we talk about our democracy and we consider our electoral process. And it's an issue, Minister, I know that you have taken very significant action on, and I commend you for it. In fact, in the bill that you've introduced earlier this year on electoral reform. We're long overdue electoral reform. We have a very strong democracy, we have an old democracy, and we've got a democracy we can be very proud of. But it isn't without its weaknesses, and it isn't without room for improvement. And the bill that you have brought forward and that myself and colleagues at the Joint Oireachtas Committee have engaged in pre-legislative scrutiny on, I believe holds huge potential to strengthen our democracy through the establishment of a permanent statutory independent electoral commission. And that electoral commission will deal with strengthening our democracy through strengthening our election process, and not just for local elections or presidential elections, but for all elections. It is particularly important that we deal with the issue of posters. But to a certain extent, while posters are a really obvious and public manifestation of some parties' clout, their deep pockets and their army of operatives that they can, put up not thousands but tens of thousands of posters overnight and subsequently remove other candidates' posters quite mysteriously, which then only appear after the deadline for taking down the posters so that the poor candidate gets fined. But getting back to the point here, the point of the Electoral Commission is that not only has it got the potential, and the Electoral Reform Bill, the potential to deal with the not so nice elements of postering, it also has the potential to deal with the electoral register, the registering of voters. That's an issue that is long overdue. We've got a register that is far from fit for purpose and far too easy to be exploited and to be abused. There are constituencies and polling stations where there are people voting that have been dead and buried many, many years. And that, I say it with no disrespect to those who have gone before us, they really shouldn't be having a say in modern day current elections. And those who abuse those who have deceased and use their polling cards to vote fraudulently attack all our democracy. When we talk about the operation as well of the polling stations themselves, the actual checking of voters, their identities, the almost overwhelming support for some candidates coming out of some polling boxes is spectacularly uniform. So that's an important issue. The funding of political parties, it's a very murky business. Some political parties and some elected representatives are obviously incredibly transparent and derive their fundraising through €10 tickets or €20 tickets, or be it table quizzes, or and are fully compliant with our standards in public office, which is very important. But it's not a level playing field, and we all know that. And the Electoral Commission has a job to do in that space too. Social media and the use of technology and the use of modern communications, in many respects, what we talk about when we talk about posters and how posters can dominate, in some respects it's easier to police. It's a lot more transparent. People can actually see the thousands of posters that are up there. But social media is here on each of our phones. And it's not just Meta, the Facebooks and the Instagram, which, you know, although they openly tell us that they have no interest in the truth and have no role to play and abdicate all responsibility when it comes to asserting or enforcing or even encouraging standards of honest communication on their platforms. There are all of the other communication apps as well, the WhatsApps, the fake community groups, the fake chat groups that become hijacked and infiltrated and are used for insidious false narratives and discussions and promoting of false narratives. So I commend you, Senator O'Reilly, for this initiative. I absolutely support it. But the reason I support also the tabling of a delay in the next reading of this legislation is because we cannot deal with this issue in isolation. We must have a holistic approach to our electoral process. We must look at all of its weaknesses and we must address all of those weaknesses. Minister, I urge you to take your responsibilities urgently. The next local elections will be soon upon us, and I believe every candidate deserves an equal playing field. I believe every person who puts themselves forward as a candidate in an election deserves to know that they're contesting the election on a level playing field. They deserve to know that the state is operating elections so that democracy is protected, democracy is championed, and democracy is actually delivered. Gormagat.
Thank you very much, Senator Fitzpatrick. And I suppose the excitement of elections as well, that's something we should never forget.